Hi everyone, so this is chapter 6, questions and worked examples. I'm doing 6.1 question 4 and I've already put it up on the whiteboard. I'll also try and put it somewhere in the video as well, but we'll see how my editing skills go. So it says, an experimental fuel cell that uses methanol as the fuel has a half equation that's followed. And these are the two half equations. You can see that I've written it quite poorly, but you get the gist. So you've got the electrons on this side, so that's on the product side, therefore it's losing them. So an oil recap, oxidation as occurring at the anode. And on this side we have our 4 electrons as a reactant, so therefore we're gaining them, hence reduction and cathode. So the first one is write an overall cell reaction. To be able to do that, obviously I have to make sure I have the same amount of electrons. So I've got my 6 electrons on top and my 4 ones on the bottom. So I need to make them the same. If I times this by 2, I get 12 electrons, and if I times this one by 3, I also get 12 electrons. So I'm going to do it really quickly over here. So I have 2 methanol plus 12 OH minus, and then I go down to here, because I'm still doing reactants, plus 3O2 plus 6H2O goes to, and then again back up here, so 2 and times 2 the whole thing, so 2 carbon dioxide plus 10 hydrogen plus 3 times 4 OH plus 12 OH minus. Okay, and I've got 12 electrons on each side. The next thing I need to do, I know it's quite small, but I'm just doing it really quickly, is I'm going to collect like terms. So in this case, I've got 12 OH on both sides, so I'm going to cross them off. And I also have got, I think that's it. Yeah, okay. Well, that makes it easy, doesn't it? CO2, yep. So the whole thing becomes 2 methanol plus 3O2 plus 6H2O goes to 2CO2 plus 10H2. Okay, and obviously you can do states, but for the sake of the question, I think you get the gist. Question B says, which reaction occurs at the positive electrode? Again, it's a galvanic cell, so because it's a fuel cell, we know that they're galvanic, so we know anode is negative and cathode is positive, so the positive one is going to be cathode, which we already know is this particular one here, so oxygen being reduced, so oxygen as the oxidant, as is always the case. C, suggest a suitable electrolyte. So we know that our electrolyte is liquid conducting electricity, and that can be either charged particles or electrons. In this case, we know, according to our reaction, it's actually an alkaline fuel cell because our acidic ones will contain H+, because it contains OH-, therefore something that would have OH- in it, so you could write OH-. In this case, I'm going to write potassium hydroxide because the potassium means that it will always be aqueous. Okay, question D says, when the cell produces electricity, the pH increases and eventually reaches a constant value. Explain why this occurs. So, again, pH is a measure of the acidity of something. So the pH of 7 would be water, for example, and that's neutral. If something's more acidic, it has a lower pH, so 2 or 3 would be a strong acid. And 10 is quite basic, so something like oven cleaner. So as the reaction proceeds at the cathodes, like this reaction, all we're doing is producing OH- ions, which is just going to make it more and more basic or more and more alkaline. Hence, it's going to get a larger number because the more OHs you get, the higher your number. Question 5 is basically saying, what is the main advantage of using a fuel cell to produce electricity? So, the advantages, it is very efficient. We know it's up to 80% efficient compared to coal, which is 30 to 40%. It is clean, and often there's little waste products. In this particular case, you do produce CO2, but because of the energy conversion and the efficiency, it's much less waste compared to a coal power plant. So 6, review. Question 9. So we can see, reading from my textbook, a fuel cell uses the breathalyzer to detect the presence of alcohol in a motorist's breath. The equation is as follows. So you've got ethanol, so CH3, CH2OH, plus O2 goes to ethanoic acid, and H2O. And the question actually tells us what's happening. So it tells us that your ethanol is oxidized and your oxygen is reduced. So we know that one is oxidation, and we know this one is reduction. Okay, so the first question is write an equation for the half reaction that occurs at the anode and at the cathode. So think again about an oil rig cat. So it's the exact same things from chapter 4 and 5, it's just very specifically applied for chapter 6. So if you're thinking at the anode is the first one, you know that an oil, so oxidation is loss, you're going to have these ones, and you know that your electrons are going to be on your right side. So you've got ethanol. Again, you know it's got 2 carbons because it's F, meth, F, prop, but. So, or but, whatever you call it. So 2 carbons with ol, alcohols have an OH group or hydroxy, goes to a carboxylic acid. It's ethanoic acid because it's got 2, and oic acids have a COOH, which looks like the C double bond O to OH. Okay, so we do cohes, so key elements, there's 2 carbons. Then we do oxygens, this one has 1, that one has 2, so we add H2O. We count our things, so we've got 6 plus 2 is 8. We only have 4, so we add 4 hydrogens, then we up to electrons, plus 4 E negative, and then we do the states. So our electrons are on the correct side, that's the anode. Next we do the cathode, which is obviously rig cat, so reduction. We have O2 goes to H2O. But again, we do our cohes, there's no key elements apart from oxygen and hydrogen. We need an extra water because H2O. We now have 4 H plus needed and 4 electrons to balance, and then we do states, and that is the cathode. So we've just done our different half equations. C, as the cell operates, will cations in the electrolyte move towards the anode or the cathode? So cations are going to be positively charged ones. In this case, e.g. H plus, and cations will move towards the cathode because, just like e.g. the Stockbridge, the cations will move towards the thing with the same charge in this particular case. And D, explain whether, excuse me, fuel cells will generate a voltage if natural gas, which is mostly methane, is blown into the breath inlet. So if you're replacing, say, so methane, CH4 plus O2, is that going to produce things? Yes, it is actually. It's going to produce CO2 and H2O. Yeah, so it will also react because it's still going to be present, particularly in an acidic environment. So that is question 9. Hopefully that was helpful. Thanks everyone.